Hello, welcome back. This is our third video on the normative ethical theories. In the last two videos we looked at the secular ethical theories, and now we're looking at the non-secular normative ethical theories. Remember, what I mean by secular is this world, the natural. I mentioned non-secular has to do with the supra-sensible world, so it's beyond the senses merely. And so God is part of these theories. And I'm going to show you the history of philosophy, timeline, and show you again. These theories fall mostly within the category reason is ontological and God exists. So reason applies to being, humans are rational, we can know reality, and there is a God, and God made humans to be rational. But then there is a shift, if you recall, to reason is not ontological and God exists. So we're going to see there are some natural law theories in this first category and some divine command theories in the second category, because if reason doesn't apply to being, we can't know the world, we can't know human nature, so we have to rely on God to tell us what human nature is like. And that's where you get these divine command theories. And those are fairly popular in the history of ethics. So let's go back to our handouts here. All right, so divine command theory, or theological voluntarism, sometimes it's called. Voluntarism is a focus on the will. So again, we're reason, emotion, will. The focus on the will is a very popular move when reason is not ontological. So like a just do it. All right, God, the good is determined by the will of God, not human's will, God's will. There is a single obligation to obey the commands of God. This view is held in Islam and by some Christians and Jews. So theists who believe in God but don't think reason is ontological. It's a view entertained in Plato's dialogue, the Euthyphro, in the question, and this is a very famous question, maybe you've had this yourself. Does God command us to do something because it is morally right? Or is it morally right because God commands us to do it? So, is there a good in itself because God made the world that way, which is reason is ontological? Or is it good because God commands it? And if it's good because there's some nature to things, then that would mean God also would have to be bound by the good. Some people don't like that. Some people say God is not bound by anything. But if reason is ontological and reason applies to being, and God's a being, then God also has a nature, and God is bound by his own nature. God would have to do what is good for God to do. Some people don't like that. And so they say, well, God doesn't have a nature. And if God doesn't have a nature, we can't know God. This is called nominalism. We can't know the nature of things. We can only know the names of things. And so God tells us his name, and we only know him by his name. And he tells us in Scripture. All right, so very popular view, again, Islam, some Christians, you could look at the timeline to see who is popular, and some Jews, the theists, theistic religions. All right, divine command theory. Now, sometimes when you hear about people talking about God and ethics, particularly if they don't believe in God, or they're atheists, or they're anti-God, they collapse all of these into divine command theory. That's not fair, because that's just not true. Look at my timeline and you can see who's a divine command theorist and why, according to those theories, and who's not. So the natural law people are not the same as divine command theory. Natural law is the view that says God is the giver of the natural law as part of divine providence. Human beings receive the law as an aspect of their nature. And this law is an aspect of the principles of practical rationality. Human action is to be judged as reasonable or unreasonable in light of the principles of practical rationality according to the natural law. This view is taught by Thomas Aquinas. So if you go back to our timeline, Thomas Aquinas is in this second category. Reason is ontological. There is a God. Human beings are essentially rational. So you can see why he goes with that. Humans are rational. The law is based on their nature. There is nature. God made humans with a nature. The law can be derived from their nature, and the law can be applied through practical rationality, which is a kind of wisdom. So this has been a long-standing and very popular tradition in ethics. Probably not in the modern period, because Aquinas is in that tradition that was rejected when you cross this line from the medieval to the modern. From the medieval to the modern here. He's part of a tradition that is considered scholastic, too much metaphysics involved, and particularly Descartes, down here in the modern period, is going to reject the way philosophy was done before him, because he wants to focus on this world and science. Some people, I just read this, some people think you couldn't have science without Thomas Aquinas, though. So that's an interesting piece of research I'll let you look up, that he gave us the categories for exploring the physical world. I'm not sure I agree, but it's something interesting to think about. And it's because reason is ontological. Reason applies to being, and he thought we could know being through our senses. Okay, that's a different class, though. All right, natural law fell out of favor, again, because of the metaphysical baggage, God, the soul, and afterlife. So, we have the development of the new natural law in our day. These are philosophers that are doing philosophy right now. And it's because they thought, yes, there's something true about what Thomas Aquinas saw, but yes, there's something true about what the contemporary philosophers say about the difficulty of doing metaphysics. So they accept some of the assumptions of the postmodern view on metaphysics. We can't really know. Or maybe reason doesn't apply to being. All right, new natural law. The primary good is human flourishing. So human flourishing is a term from Aristotle. Aquinas picks it up, and it's like a fullness and richness of life. And this is achieved by pursuit of the basic goods. All right, so they talk about 10 basic goods. There are basic goods, but no hierarchy of goods. So I've been talking about thinking is presuppositional, humans are rational, emotional, willing, the good is based on, the good is the end in itself, virtue is based on the good, happiness is based on achieving the good. They're going to say, no. There's many goods, and there's no hierarchy. There's no steps. They're all kind of like this. Practical reason, again, practical rationality, wisdom, grasps as self-evidently desirable these basic goods. So we don't have to argue it. Everybody knows these are desirable, and here they are. Life and health. I mean, who wouldn't want life and health? Knowledge and aesthetic experience. Who doesn't want knowledge and beauty? Skilled work and play. Who doesn't want to do good work? And play is always, I mean, even my dog likes to play, right? Play is necessary. Friendship, marriage, harmony with God, and harmony among a person's judgments, choices, feelings, and behavior. Harmony in yourself, like Plato talked about. So it's almost like they're taking a bunch of all the stuff that's good and saying, we all want this. These are the basic goods. All right, as grasped by practical reason, the basic goods give foundational reasons for action to human agents. So why do we act? Because we want these basic goods. Moreover, they are recognized as good for all human agents. They're universal. And it's equally intelligible to act for the sake of the life of another as for one's own life. So we get a sense of the common good from this. And this is from a contemporary philosopher I got to study with him for a little while, named Christopher Tollefson. He's a new natural law theorist. Also, I'm going to go back to our timeline. I put him on here because he's new natural law, and this is Robert George. He is a new natural law theorist who's at Princeton University right now, and he is very famous for taking natural law and applying it to questions of life, like abortion, like euthanasia, end of life, beginning of life, and defense of life. So he takes new natural law and applies it to those contemporary issues. He also thinks new natural law can guide the legal code. So I'm going to leave that there. You can see there's not a lot of theories in the non-secular category. These are the ones that rise to the top. But it's basically God told us, God made us in such a way, and God made us in such a way, but we don't need to bring God into it. Again, going off of those categories in the history of philosophy. Now, where do we go from here? Well, I will ask you to consider these theories. Again, I will put some resources for you to follow up on these theories in the Canvas shell. Think about all of the theories we've gone through and ask yourself, A, are they going off of an accurate description of human nature? B, do they provide us with rational justification for the answer, what is the good? And C, should I go with one of these? Which one would I go with? How do I choose? It's difficult, right? And so you can see why there's a lot of confusion in the field of ethics, ethical theory. They contradict each other if you start to think about it. So what should we do? I'm going to move us into another theory that's going to affirm reason is ontological, and there is a God, and there's a moral law based on human nature. Maybe we don't need to bring God into the picture. We could look at human nature. But we're going to see, can we borrow from Kant's categorical imperative that there is a universal moral law? Can we borrow from, let's say, the natural law, that the natural law is based on human nature? And can we give rational justification to the answer to the question, what is the good? We'll borrow from Aristotle. We'll borrow from Plato. And we're borrowing because there's something true in them. There's something true here. We need a mechanism for getting at truth. And that's specifically what has been denied when you make this move to reason is not ontological and God exists, and then to reason is not ontological and God does not exist. You're making the move to deny truth, that there's something there to be known outside of our minds. So in an age that is given up on truth, we may have to go back to these first philosophers and the second category here and reevaluate reason, meaning, truth. All right, so I will show you where we're going to go next. I've got this handout called The Natural Moral Law, and we're going to look at levels of seeking the good. And we're going to see if we can go deeper and see if we can get to the good. And not just the good, a moral law based on the good. So that's where we're going next. Thanks for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed this overview of the normative ethical theories. Again, you can dig in and read more about these. You can watch the videos I'm going to post and think critically about each one.